With your help, we can continue to fight for freedom, reach new audiences, and bring important information to the public free of charge. This is not possible without your generosity. Join our quest for the truth and our freedom and donate today, telling it as it is. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.
Now, clinical trials of puberty-blocking drugs for children have been approved for the first time since their use in gender clinics was banned last year. It follows a major review that raised concerns that the evidence for use of hormone treatments in children was built on shaky foundations. Now, before December 2020, blockers were available to young people through NHS Gender Identity Development Service at the Tavistock and Portman NHS Foundation Trust. Then in December of 2020, the High Court ruled that kids under 16 were unlikely to be able to give informed consent, and that led to caution in their prescription. Then in March 2024, NHS England announced that it would no longer routinely prescribe puberty blockers for new patients under 18. They pointed to insufficient evidence on their safety and effectiveness based on a review by NICE and interim advice from the CAS review. Then in May of last year, the UK government introduced emergency legislation to temporarily ban private and overseas prescriptions of puberty blockers for new patients under 18. That came into force the following month. And then in December of last year, the temporary ban was made indefinite across the UK. Well, Oliver Whitfield-Miocic has more.
Well, it's a very contentious area, Sam, where, a huge debate has taken place, especially online as part of the so-called culture wars about whether it is right or whether it is wrong to offer what can often be children as young as 10 these drugs which stop puberty in its tracks. Now, here we're going to see potentially up to 220 young people up to the age of 16 taking part in these clinical trials. They will have had to have been questioning their gender and have been referred to a gender service before they're allowed to take part, and they'll then be injected with these hormone suppressing drugs which basically stop puberty in its tracks. So in girls, stopping breasts from developing, and in boys, stopping those vocal changes that we see and facial hair growth from happening. Now, those who are in favour of this type of treatment say that essentially when a young person is questioning their gender, they can face things such as stress and anxiety, and these drugs can help alleviate some of that. They also say now it buys time for that person to work out whether they want to go on to make a fuller transition. But it is a highly contentious area, and those who are against it say there are huge ethical questions that need to be answered, such as making sure that you get informed consent and how difficult it can often be to get informed consent from somebody who can be 10, 11, 12 years old, and whether they realise the full ramifications of the drugs that they're taking and the long-lasting effect that those drugs can have. Other opponents say that the Tavistock Clinic had previously been handing out these puberty blockers far too freely in years gone by, and that's why we're seeing now the threat of potential legal action, a judicial review potentially being brought by two campaigners against the government. They're urging medical regulators to stop this trial before it even gets off the ground, and if not, they say that they will be going to the High Court and their lawyers will then serve papers against the government. Now, we have had a statement from the Department for Health and Social Care in which it says young people with gender incongruence need access to high quality, safe and effective care. We are following the CAS review, which was clear that the evidence on care for these children is lacking, and proposed this research to help provide it. The spokesperson goes on to say medical care must always be based on solid evidence and children's safety must come first. But this is an issue that is likely to raise that debate once again online, and it quite often can be vociferous, both for and against.
With your help, we can continue to fight for freedom, reach new audiences, and bring important information to the public free of charge. This is not possible without your generosity. Join our quest for the truth and our freedom and donate today, telling it as it is. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.
And welcome to the Protagonist. It's a Wednesday. Thank you for joining us. Today's topic, pagan rituals masquerading as modern medicine. A new UK clinical trial to assess the risk and benefits of puberty-blocking drugs in children has been announced, as you just heard. This follows the banning of the drugs for gender treatment last year after a major review, the CAS review, raised concerns about the lack of clinical evidence over their safety for under 18s. Researchers from King's College London say the trial will involve around 220 kids under the age of 16 and will examine the impact of the drugs on their physical, social and emotional well-being. The new clinical trial called Pathway will involve children who are currently accessing gender services. They will have reached puberty but will be younger than 16. The researchers said there would be no minimum age for taking the drugs. Several MPs have called for the trial to be halted. Susan and Marcus Evans, two of the first whistleblowers involved in exposing the scandal at the now closed Tavistock Clinic and the CAS review, have written to the Health Secretary asking him to immediately halt the proposed UK puberty blocker trial. To most of us, the questions remain. Why are these unsafe interventions still happening? Why are we experimenting on children if no clinical evidence exists on the safety of these treatments? And where are the parents and why are the parents allowing this to happen to their children? If scientists want data, surely this must be available from subjects who have already received these drugs. You would think so, wouldn't you? We mustn't forget COVID, where unsafe, untested injections were forced upon us. And now we're seeing those terrible results to many. What is happening to modern medicine? Has it been captured by the ghouls and people who have lost their moral bearings? Or is it simply dirty money and political capture that allows heinous crimes to be committed in the name of science? We'll discuss this with our guest today, and we have a great panel. Kellie-Jay is a founder of Standing for Women Limited. Dr. Gerry Waters is a suspended medical practitioner, and Sarah Newlyn is a writer and commentator. And got to say thank you very much to everybody for joining us. First of all, I was going to go with you, Gerry, just to find out when you heard about this as a GP, what was your first reaction?
Well, I'd heard about the Tavistock Institute, the Tavistock. I was never quite sure what they were, but I had heard about them before, and I'd come across them. And as a GP, as I say, I wasted my life over 40 years in general practice seeing patients. I reckon I've probably seen somewhere between up to 300,000 patients. I was never involved in committees, or I never looked, since I was in college, I never looked down a microscope. So my experience would be, dealing with children. And again, I've probably seen tens of thousands of children. I've seen very, very few with what they now refer to as gender incongruence. Very, very few. I did see a couple, and I'm talking about a handful. And fundamentally, from my experience, they were children attention seeking. And they were attention seeking with parents who somehow or other were also attention seeking. We had this sort of complex that they would they were special. And in the schools, two families stick out in my mind, and they were, how would you say, psychologically or personality wise suspect. They had personality disorders, and that's my experience as a GP. With pretty massive experience. and it wasn't heard of. Like, and it gradually just grew. So, as I say, I would hardly be the expert on the topic, other than perhaps being an expert on people. And there's a saying in the media that what you don't do is you don't interview children or animals, primarily because the unpredictability of it. You tend to try and avoid those. And with children, and particularly in children of between 10 and 16, honestly, they have no idea. Hugely influenced by their peers, and massively influenced by their parents, but perhaps at that age even more so by their peers.
Kellie-Jay, what do you think?
Well, I think Gerry's right that it's often children seeking attention. But look, Tavistock already know uh, what happens to children when you block their puberty, and what they've found is that they fail to follow up. So all they need to do is contact one of the many hundreds of children that they've already irreversibly harmed, and find out what happened to those kids. They know that, I mean, the study's only 2 years. I don't really know what any good can come out of 2 years. And we know that once a child's blocked their puberty for a couple of years, it is likely that they will continue, go on to have cross-sex hormones. We know that a female body going into menopause in their teens or early 20s, when they start these cross-sex hormones and puberty blockers, is not a good thing. They're going to do brain scans and bone density scans, because they know that that might be one of the, they're looking for damage to bone density and brain development. Like, you can't be looking at that as a side effect of a drug that you're administering to a child in a situation that is not going to save that child's life. Medicine obviously has side effects, all sorts of medicine, but that's usually weighed up against actually somebody losing their life. And in this case, there is no evidence at all that anyone's taking their lives. Otherwise, we would have thousands of children that would have taken their own lives over the last few years. And we know the data since they started referring people to the Tavistock. So there's so many big red flags with this as well. It doesn't matter if you're in care. A foster carer can consent to this trial. It doesn't matter if you've got a history of trauma. It doesn't matter if you've got unresolved trauma. They're casting their net incredibly wide, and I'd be really shocked if they found a well-adjusted, happy child that actually wants to be on this trial.
Sarah, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I concur with everything that's been said so far. I mean, it's an absolute. It's so sinister that they're going ahead with this. I can't quite believe that it's happening. As Kellie-Jay just said, we know already what these do to kids. There's enough data there that there basically has already been a trial, or in name, and we know what damage it's done to these kids. And when you get, I mean, when I've posted online and written about this, I get the same pushback as everybody does. Why am I interested in children orgasming, for example? Well, I'm not interested in children orgasming, but I'm interested in them not being able to orgasm when they're adults. And this kind of deliberate pushing of this as if it's kindness, when actually it's anything but kindness. It's a cruelty, and I completely agree that a lot of it is attention seeking by both the kids, which is more understandable, but by these really quite insidious parents who are looking for a shot at fame, internet fame, or I mean, there's been so many families, these influencer families, pushing their children onto TikTok and spreading it worldwide. They're wonderful mermaid children, and it's really insidious. I think it's appalling.
The medical fraternity, Sarah, and government, but the medical fraternity. That's why we've said, is it a pagan ritual now? Is it masquerading as modern science? Because, I mean, we loved, or they loved to attack the most vulnerable, and now we had the elderly, or the ones that were vulnerable with COVID, and now we have this with the with the puberty blockers. The children are vulnerable. It's just appalling. Do you think the medical, here's one thing for you. With COVID, no one has been held accountable. No one.
No, I mean, that's the thing, isn't it?
Either.
I think that, I mean, I have very little faith in the medical industry for many reasons, but I do see it now as it's a huge money-making industry. You know, you can see what they've done with putting people on sort of blood pressure medication. Almost everyone you speak to over a certain age is on blood pressure medication. You know, it's a way of just selling products, and I genuinely believe that they need this to pass because it's another massive revenue stream for them. And they did the same with COVID, and all of these things. They're revenue streams, and you know, vaccines, particularly, as we know, one of their biggest money earners. And now, you know, if they get this passed and get people to accept that puberty blockers are an essential treatment for children, who knows how far it will go and how many kids will get sucked into this, and it will make them fortunes. So yeah, I have very little faith in anything. So apologies to Gerry there, but you know, the medical industry is very corrupt, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, Gerry, what do you think? I mean, from a former practicing GP, enjoying a long break at the moment, I would imagine. But the medical industry, it does resemble in many ways, if you look at the last bunch of years, that it's transpired from going from you know, you have Christianity and you have moral compasses and stuff, and the last few years it's just diverted. It's all over the shop. And now we have, you know, when we did the title, a pagan, you know, pagan rituals, I couldn't think of anything more apt for what they're doing at the moment, because there is no moral compass. It's a disgrace for the whole system, and doing irreparable damage not only to the victims of these trials, but also to the profession, isn't it?
Well, I think using the term pagan rituals does a disservice to the concept of pagan rituals. The reality of it is, I don't think the pagans were that bad. I think I should probably elucidate who I am, and I'm probably a very poor defender of the medical profession. I was suspended in March 21 for refusing to go along with the COVID hoax. I wouldn't mask, I wouldn't social distance, I wouldn't. I examined all my patients up front. No, you know, with no personal protection for them or and I refused to give the vaccine, with the result that I was temporarily suspended. Temporarily, I use the word, in March 21, and theoretically, I'm still suspended because they they claim that suspension was, you know, was lifted by them, in spite of the fact that they brought me into the High Court to suspend me. So I am waiting for my High Court appearance. I'm just being dogged at this stage because that's the type of person I am. I'm just insisting that they bring me into the High Court. They won't bring me into the High Court because they're terrified of me, because I was right. I was absolutely completely right about the masking, the social distancing, the, you know, the all the crimes, the greatest crime in humanity, and I was totally right about the gene therapy masquerading as a vaccine. So they really don't want to touch me. They just want rid of me. They're hoping I die. But just talking about, you know, coming on here this morning, I'd hoped that I'd be engaged in a battle with somebody, and unfortunately, all four of us seem to be on the same side. I'm hugely disappointed, Mike. I get up early in the morning, and if I'm getting out of bed, I want to fight. I was a boxer as a kid, and I haven't changed. Bit old, mind you, for boxing. But what I'd say is, maybe we should discuss the ideology behind this whole thing. The whole, you know, the whole LBG, you know, the LBGTQRS, you know, ideology, what it's about. You know, because obviously none of the four of us are going to get into any sort of debate on the morality of abusing children, you know.
Mm.
So, just a suggestion, Mike, maybe we should talk about the ideology and why the
Something
ideology is
if I can
there.
jump in there, Gerry, something were you talking about COVID there? I mean, I was like you, I didn't follow any of the COVID stuff. But I think there's a link there also because I don't know what, I mean, Kelly, you've done lots of stuff on the whole ideology aspect of it. And I think it took hold during COVID when everybody was locked up and kids were on their devices for so long and every day, even doing school on devices, which was, I wrote about the time, it just was appalling to me. But I think it took hold of many children then and their parents. I think a lot of parents got hooked on TikTok and other sort of social media during that time as a boredom buster, I suppose. But yeah, so I think there's definitely a link between the two things as well, between that the lockdowns and everybody being shut up at home, and this ideology being able to be spread and take hold of kids who were having very little social interactions other than on their phones.
Kelly?
The science element of it all as well. COVID, I guess, was a test to see exactly what you can make a population do, like with
Yeah.
very little persuasion, really. I mean, it wasn't like people were knocking on your doors and then everyone came out every Thursday, was it, and clapped for the NHS, and then those same people were then demanding those lifesavers. The people that kept the country running then had to be vaccinated. So I think that was a test of compliance. But before that, we already had this idea of a trans child, and part of the ideology with the whole trans kid is to enable very nefarious men
Yeah.
to
Yeah,
be
yeah,
unfettered access to women-only spaces.
that's right. Yeah.
That's
Absolutely.
with
Mm.
all of this with
Yeah.
women. I couldn't believe it. I don't think if you say to someone, you said to someone 5 to 6 years ago, you know that what we do is we stop a child from going through puberty.
It's
Because
insane.
there's something else. People wouldn't believe you, and now
I know.
people are saying, "Well, it must be okay because doctors are doing it."
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? That science has become a bit of a religion to people in that, I know we're
Mm.
talking about paganism here, but also I think science in the last few years, people, they think it's cool, follow scientists and listen to what scientists say. But when the scientists are saying some very, very dangerous things, you have to think for yourself. I mean, my website's called Critically Thinking because I saw that lack of people just take what they're told by anyone in authority. Like Stanley Milgram did the experiment, didn't he, back in the 50s and 60s? But and it's true. I think anybody sees a white coat and or someone like Helen Weberly telling them, because she's got the term doctor attached to her, that it makes sense, and people just swallow it, and it's really quite scary. I think we need people to actually wake up to what's happening and what's being done to these kids.
Can
Yeah.
I just ask you, Gerry, I just want to ask you, all of you, sorry for butting in, but I have to, otherwise I won't get a word.
Try and stay out of it, Mike. Will you?
Sorry about that. But I just want to know, to everybody here, and have your two bobs worth, what's happened to the parents?
Well, you see, sorry, just going back to I can't help but feel, and call me a suspicious old man, that very close to the surface of all of this is some sort of paedophilia. It's a
Oh
kind of a
yeah,
way to get to children. So
absolutely.
as for so in fact, I think that the drivers are the sort of Epstein type people. And there seems to be an awful lot of those, or rather, the Epstein type people seem to be in positions of power. The scientists and doctors that got involved, as in COVID, initially got involved through money, greed.
Mm.
We as a GP, I was there on the front line. I was getting the notifications. We got €70 for a telephone consultation, and we were absolved of all responsibility for what might go on in that telephone conversation. And the nurses and the secretaries of the doctors were getting €70 for sitting at home in their pajamas taking telephone conversations. So if somebody rang a surgery and discuss COVID, they obviously you'd engineer it around to discuss COVID, and then you got €70. And that was money for all rope. That was easy money. And that's how they brought, in Ireland, I don't know about anywhere else, but I presume this was the sort of protocol. They brought us in by paying us, really handy money. So it result that your secretary and your nurse might be taking 10 calls a day each, to making €700 each, and on top of your salary, and you might be making another. So you're making £2,000 a day, 10 grand a week within for doing nothing. And
Yeah.
I wouldn't do it. I just wouldn't get involved. Partly
Where
because
did
I'm
the money
stupid.
come from, Gerry? Where
Pardon?
did the money come from? Who was paying that?
Oh,
Was it
yeah.
government?
Look, they were spraying money out. They were giving people money here in Ireland for not going into work. Well, look,
Yeah.
this was all printed European. These were euros being printed
Oh, yeah.
in Europe,
Yeah.
and being spread. And this is the fact. I'm not making this up. They were getting €70 for a telephone conversation. And some doctors very, very rapidly realized, whoa, here's a Mercedes, and here's a
Yeah.
home in Spain. So what happened was they dug. They're the first shovelfuls in digging a hole. So you're digging a hole around yourself, and you're digging and you're digging and you're digging. And then when it began to come out that, hey, there's nothing here in the community, they had to defend the fact that they were, they'd acted that way. So then they were in the defensive mode. And then they introduced the vaccine. And we were getting €18 for doing a flu jab. But we got €60 for doing the
Wow.
COVID jab. And again, in the COVID, there were no questions being asked. In the same, so you could jab anybody. It didn't matter whether you killed them. You didn't have to ask about allergies. You didn't really have to do anything. And your nurse and your technician, whoever you brought in, could jab them in at €60. You can kind of do, if you're working efficiently, you can do 5, 6, 7 an hour, and you're not even there. The nurse is doing it.
Yeah.
So you're making big money. So this is how, when you talk about the doctors and the scientists, they're brought in through money.
Yeah.
And then they're locked in. They've dug the hole. They have to justify it. And that's the way I see it. But behind that, as I say, is the ideology. It's a bit like when I went into college in 1971. Now you're looking at me and you're saying there's no way was that man in college in 1971. Now, but the old Botox, Botox has been brilliant for me. But so when I went into college in 1971, they were talking about global cooling. We were going to face into an ice age, and I said no, and it was all anthropogenic, and I said no. For 30 years, I've watched the global, warming scam, and then I've watched going from global cooling to global warming, and then to climate change, and all the time I'm saying this is a scam, this is a hoax. And how they do that? They did that through money. They bought the scientists. They bought
Yeah.
the media, and if you got enough money, you can do anything you like, including pedophilia.
Yeah. And I mean, I if I can jump in, Kelly, you touched on it earlier about how astonished you've been about how many women have bought into this ideology. And I'm with you. I mean, I wrote a piece about some of the mums, some of the parents of these children, and I compared the autogynephilic men. They're like a sort of partnership, aren't they? They need the trans child to exist to validate their fetish, really, and make it not a fetish so that people don't see it that way. And these mums have just bought wholesale into it, and I've been astounded by that as well. It's shocking, and I think with the Gerry, you touched on the media there as well. I think most of the media have been totally bought and paid for with this stuff, and you've only got to look at the BBC and look at how many programs they get trans people to come on and talk about issues. Even on their news broadcasting, they're always interviewing a trans person or a drag queen and it's in all their dramas and their kids shows, and it's really kind of been pushed hard. And there are questions to be asked about why and where the financing is coming from for this kind of wholesale push.
I can butt in there only because the Netflix, a lot of people that we mix with, they're terrible people because they do nothing else but propagandize, I think, good things. But they were saying that Netflix, if you have in any of your productions, you have either gay or you have trans or something that's a bit, particular, that sort of, says that we are encompassing everybody, then you've got yourself a gig with your production. And if you don't do that, and it could be a very good production, but if you don't do that, you may not get the gig with your show on Netflix.
Yeah.
And could you imagine though, Gerry, Lawrence of Arabia? I mean, this is a straight, very happy. Well, not happy. They chop heads off, but it's just a good movie. And I haven't yet seen any trans challenged people in that yet. And so what they're doing is they're saying that unless you include these woke philosophies and these, and think about all the other rest of the world, then you're not going to get the gig with Netflix. And that alone is sending out a bad message, isn't it, Kelly?
Yeah, look, I think what that is I think you've got university students. They've been indoctrinated through university, then they get into these jobs, and then they make themselves very busy with, hey, this is the next new thing. They're looking for their own civil rights movement. And unfortunately, rather than maybe looking at, like, I used to live in a city called Bristol where they tipped a statue of a slaver well, he wasn't a slaver. He was a merchant, and he traded in humans. And rather than people focusing on the hundreds, if not thousands, of actual people living in sex slavery, so prostitutes being trafficked in Bristol and the inequality of Bristol, they decided to focus on something from hundreds of years ago. So I think that's what's very apparent in today's sort of 20 to 35-year-olds is you don't have to do anything. You just have to declare that you're something. So
Yeah.
you can declare that you're trans inclusive. You don't really need to write a book. You don't need to do any research. You don't need to do anything difficult at all or achieve anything. You can simply say, I am this thing, or I believe this thing, and you get some sort of social credit for
Yeah.
it. Just going to parents, just because you mentioned that and we sort of glossed over it, but just looking at parents, there is, I guess it's almost the same thing with women. It's the devouring mother. It's this idea that she doesn't have to achieve anything. She can just present her child. And I think
Yeah.
it's really frightening, the number of women. Like I didn't give my kids Calpol unless they absolutely needed it, unless it
Yeah.
was really critical. I just didn't do anything like that with my kids. I can't say that I
Yeah.
didn't vaccinate my children, because I did. But and I may rethink that, although they haven't had the later vaccinations, actually. They haven't had all the HPV and so on.
Yeah.
But I just sort of think there's why are we rewarding these women? How is it that someone says, oh, I have a trans child, and people around them go, oh, you're so brave, you're so wonderful, rather than
Yeah.
like, are you insane?
I think that's the thing, Kelly, as well, is that the whole making being trans such a special thing has been very damaging as well. It's the idea of this mermaid child. Anyway, sort of pro-trans people, trans supporters or whatever you call, they often, you'll hear them say things like, I think they're beautiful people. And you think, well, even if you do believe in the existence of the trans person, which I personally don't, but if you do, then why would they all be beautiful people? It's this kind of idea that just makes them this certain special category all of their own, and that's very, I think that's intoxicating for those parents, isn't it? It's the idea that they've got this precious special child that they love and accept, and look how wonderful I am for doing it, and they love to talk about how hard life is going to be for that child and that they're going to advocate for them. And it's really, I mean, it's so much about the parent rather than about the child so often, isn't it? It's a kind of...
Sorry, Mike. Mike, may I just light the touch paper? May I just light the fuse? I think the problem is women.
Hang on.
Kelly?
So I'm
Sorry, it's
getting
not
to the
my
hill.
time to go. Women think with their emotions. women think now. You're talking about the parents, but I would bet you my bottom dollar that it's principally the women. And let's face it, the women rule the world. The women actually decide. We pretend we're the bosses and we're all macho, but at the end of the day, it's the women. And I honestly think that the massive amount of this is driven on by women, the female part of the relationship, or you've either got women or feminized men who are involved in it. Now, I thought I'd throw that out to the two of you just before I leave. Coward, coward
Yeah.
retreat. What?
Gerry, and
Well,
the foot soldiers.
anybody's all brave. I'm not going to say a thing.
I'm not brave. I'm stupid.
The foot soldiers of the movement are women, 100%. I mean, Orwell talked about young women in particular being the enforcers and the informers. So it 100% is women. It's young women. It's women in gender studies departments throughout university. It's feminized
Yeah.
men, like you say. But at the top of the movement, they're the foot soldiers for predominantly real misogynist alpha males who are very, very
Yeah.
powerful, who are
Yeah,
in positions
yeah.
of power in pharmaceuticals and so on. But yeah, in every day, who are the women, who are the people like pouring scorn at people like me and Sarah who go against it? Well, it would be women. Women are
Mm.
pretty toxic when it comes to this. And it is mothers, but it is dads in the home that are the AGPs, the autogynephiles that are subjecting their families to participate in their fetish. So different sexes bring a different element to it. But yeah, I 100% agree with you. It's women.
Yeah.
Should never got the vote. Honestly, that's
I have no.
you.
Who are you? I've never met you before because I have to go home to my wife.
Oh, you're just a coward, Mike. Will you?
I am.
You know.
I am. I'm like all good men. But I'm just thinking though, we are saying that women are very emotional and da da da. People are influenced greatly still by legacy media and even some of the independent media that they trot out, just absolute BS. So and let's face it, legacy media or media is an arm of the government, and they want you to believe the
Money.
narrative. It's
Money.
propaganda. So, in all fairness, they are being controlled by an institution or a device such as propaganda, and that propaganda is doing exactly what it's meant to do. So we really can't blame anybody to an extent. But I'm not a parent, by the way. I would have been a terrible parent. Well, I would have been. I haven't grown up in many ways, according to my wife. I hear that every day. You haven't grown up. But and she's probably right too. But I'm just thinking though, if that's all the information people have, and they go to the doctor, Gerry, you're different, but they go to the doctor. You are different in many ways, but if they go to their doctor and the doctor follows the narrative, what do you do? I mean, if you're going to an expert and your car breaks down, he says you need a new engine, and you say, no, it doesn't, it needs a new ashtray or something. It just shows you that you don't know what you're talking about. And when you go to your doctors, according to government and media, they know what's best for you. So so what do you do then? I mean, and I am attacking the parents, by the way. I think parenting
Yeah.
is
I
appalling.
think that's important to do because I think when you become a parent, when you have your child, you're the expert in your child. You know them better than anybody else. You've grown them inside you. You've raised them since birth, and I think that's the problem: is that people have handed over that kind of parental responsibility to medics and to people in that who they believe have their best interests at heart. And actually, it's not. It's you are the expert in your child. And I think that if people just opened kept their critical thinking open and stopped handing over, I made a comparison in an article I wrote about the way people use things like Fitbits and things. I mean, I'm not having a go at everyone who uses a Fitbit or an Apple Watch or whatever to monitor but they believe. I had somebody say to me once that, I felt like I slept really well last night, but my monitor ring said I didn't. And I thought, well, if you felt you slept well, you slept well. It's this idea that you hand over responsibility for everything. And when it comes to your children, you shouldn't be handing over that responsibility. They are your responsibility, and you know them better than anybody else. And it's up to you to decide what's best for them.
Perhaps we need to start asking questions. I mean, we're talking about a very serious subject. Glenn Beck, US commentator, used to tell his children that when someone or a government or someone says, this is what you do, you should ask all the questions. Why? For what reason? But no one does that these days.
No.
They follow the narrative. And again, we go back to media. The propaganda that's perpetrated by legacy media and a great number of independent media outlets, their job is to sway you to the government narrative. And the government narrative is exactly that. It says, these puberty blockers is great. They're fantastic. Don't worry about being a parent. Trust us. We know best.
But the product of bad parenting is bad parenting. That is the reality. And, like the reason why parents are bad, because they don't know what a good parent is, because their parents were bad. And this probably goes back a couple of generations, back to sort of when I was a kid, where, the idea of spare the rod and spoil the child. Not that I'm suggesting that you should beat children, but at the end of the day, there isn't. We went through a period of, what was it? So the L'Oreal period of where I'm worth it. Every child is worth it. You flick back your hair and I'm worth it. But and this is the problem. The parents are the product of their parents and their parents. And perhaps in the 50s and the 60s, there was too much strictness, and things were too rigid. And then it swung one way, and now it's swinging away. It's a pendulum, and we're just sort of at the height. We're at the top of the swing of a pendulum, and it'll swing back. I don't know what the cycle is, whether it's 20 years or 30 years, but yes, it all comes back to parenting, and we can abdicate responsibility by giving it over to the internet, or we can abdicate the media, or to an extent the government. But at the end of the day, our primary drive, and I'm a parent. I'm a parent of 4. I don't know how good I'm a parent, but I still talk to them. But it's very, very. Nobody can tell you how to parent fundamentally, because every one of the children are different. My 4 children are all different, and they all took different handling. Now, I don't know if I did it right or not, but now I'm a grandparent and I see them. The funny thing is, I actually relate to my grandchildren probably better than I do my children. And that's fundamentally because I realize I don't really have to change them. I don't really have to model them. They're going to be the people they are. Yeah, and the people they are is their genetic predisposition to being either little bastards or lovely people. So it comes back. It comes down to parenting and their parents and their parents, and that's all I'm going to say.
Look, I have a cat, so does that make me a parent?
Pardon?
No, it doesn't make you a parent. No. You can't identify as a parent. You either are one or you're not.
Yes,
I'm enjoying life, so maybe I'm not.
Hold on. It's either admits to it or not.
I'm going to make a comment on schools as well, because at the same time as like what we can see is like the state of parenting also through the state of schools. And schools, like my children range from like my oldest is 23, my youngest is 17, and I also have 4. But they had a school system that didn't use the word no. They just, and I think that probably is the same as the parents. And it's not. You'd have to say, oh, you're on a red card, you're on an amber card, you're on a number 5, you're on a number 2. And it wasn't like, you're behaving badly, sit down, be quiet, do your work, or you miss playtime. It was these long-winded, you had like restorative justice in schools where a bully would sit with and I mean a genuine bully. I don't mean someone that just said something mean on one day, but a genuine bully would sit in the same room as a child that they'd been bullying, and they'd have a chat. It all just went out of the window when we stopped using this word no, and we stopped making adults an authority in schools. And schools also at the same time started to think that they knew better than you about your child, and parents at the same time were absolving themselves of the responsibility, sort of almost like, oh well, I've managed to get my child to school on time, that makes me some sort of hero.
Yeah,
And now in this country, we don't even expect parents to give their children breakfast, and
I
we're
saw
trying to
that.
do it earlier and earlier. It's
I
disgusting.
agree. Did you see that awful video, Kelly, of that the government put out about this new breakfast scheme? And they interviewed some parents, and it was all fluffy, and there was fun music behind it. And what will you do with the extra 20 minutes you get from not having to feed your own children? And
Oh,
it was, they were talking about, I can get the housework done, or I can. It was just awful. And I think that's absolutely right. I think parents, as we say, they just handed responsibility over at the first opportunity. And I will bring it back to what I said earlier about COVID. I think that escalated during COVID, when everybody doing everything online, it was just easy to do that, wasn't it, to hand that responsibility away. um, and
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 now they
the
want your kids earlier and earlier. They want your kids, like
yeah,
in the last section, they were sort of saying, "Oh, from 3 months or 6 months or 9 months, we're going to do free childcare." And I'm thinking,
yeah,
bad. Like, look, some women do want to go back to work, and they have incredible careers, but that is not most women. Most women have an
yeah.
hourly paid job that they don't particularly like, and then what we're asking them to do is shove your kids into daycare.
Yeah,
We're
let someone else raise them.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd like to see some long-term study on, is daycare good for society? Because I have a feeling it isn't. But put your
Yeah,
kids in daycare with some people that also don't like their jobs, who've had to put their own babies in daycare, who've had to put their own babies, and so on and so on. It's
yeah,
just there's something, and the trans child, surrogacy, all of these things are trying to eradicate the connection between mothers
100%.
and fathers,
Yeah.
mothers and children,
Yeah,
families
Yeah.
in general. And we're all just moving away into this complete, it's like the trinity of inhumanity. It's
yeah.
surrogacy, transgenderism, and there's another one. Oh, euthanasia.
Yes, 100%. I've written about all three, exactly, and exactly that, Kelly. Just it's a disconnect of humanity, and I talk a lot about in my writing about transhumanism, and I think that I really relate transgenderism to transhumanism. I think it's this idea that that your body is not you. You've got this kind of gendered spirit that is. And it's really insidious, and I think all those things feed into that. And the assisted dying, as they're calling it, is absolutely up there with those other things. Yeah,
Can I just
it's awful.
sort of squeeze in before Gerry starts again? And by the way, we got just got a note from someone who's at the Gulf of Alaska, the furthest point, and they're actually watching us, which is fantastic. So, David, thank you for joining us from Alaska. I'm sure you'll be enjoying your raw fish. You'll dive into that water through the ice. No, that's a seal. Sorry about that. Look, I'm just thinking. It says here that the whistleblowers, they actually believe the proposed research risk will cause harm to the kids and the children that'll be with him forever. I mean, and that's what a trial does, isn't it, Gerry? It's supposed to see if that works, if that doesn't work. What happens is if it doesn't work.
Yeah, well, you see, this is the problem. You can't just embark upon a trial with those 262 children. In effect, there is no trial. You know it's going to do damage to a high proportion of them. It's the morality of the trial. As far as I'm concerned, there's no question. But there again, I'm an old man with concrete thinking, fixed thinking, and that, So I'm not amenable to argument. But as far as I'm concerned, there is no upside to a trial like that. I got to admit, maybe I would do the trial over the age of 18. But again, you see, this is the problem. That's the dynamics of it, that they're puberty blockers. And puberty comes on at a very, very stupid time. In little girls, it'll start at kind of 10, and in little boys, it'll kind of start, well, usually a bit later. But it's just a damn stupid time to have puberty. It'd be so much easier if it was in our 30s or something. And then you could do it. And the other thing about it, it's irreversible. It's not like you can say, well, this is temporary, and your testicles will grow back if we take you off the, or rather, you'll get your hormones and you'll be the same, and your bone density after taking you off this after 2 or 3 years. It'll change your thinking as well. It'll change your thinking. And this is what we were talking about earlier on. The difference between men and women. The reason why we think differently is because of our hormones. And that's what makes Mike and I superior, because
Don't you bring me into this one. I'm not part of this.
we have testosterone. Well, some kind of have testosterone circulating, and you've got estrogen and progesterone, and that makes you nice people.
Well, no.
And the testosterone makes, well, I don't know about Mike, makes me a nasty person.
No, I'm letting you have the floor.
You're a coward.
I am, Sarah. As I defer from Gerry, what are parents thinking? I mean, we've talked about, Gerry has told us that it's a woman's fault, but what are they thinking? Because when you do a trial, as Gerry attested to, we don't know what's going to happen. That's what a trial is. So they're facing. Tell me this. This is child abuse, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is, in my view, absolutely child abuse. I mean, to be honest, offering your child up for any medical experiment, in my opinion, is child abuse, because you can't possibly know what the outcome's going to be. I mean, in this case, we know that it's going to be damaging, but, for any kind of medical, why would you offer your child up for that? Your job is, as a parent, is to protect your child and to put them forward. I mean, I remember feeling the same about parents who put their kids in COVID vaccine trials. It was just astonishing to me that you would do that. And I think one of the biggest lies that's been allowed to perpetuate about this is that treating puberty like a problem. Puberty is an essential part of human development, one of the most essential and biggest steps in human development, and treating it like it's a condition to be halted and changed, and it's actually insane. I think it's absolutely insane. So these parents have clearly swallowed the lie and feel that again, they've handed their responsibility over. And I think as Kelly said, not saying no. If your little boy comes to you and says he's a girl, you say no, you're not. You can be gentle and you can be polite about it, but you have to be firm on it with them. But instead, they'd rather enter them into a medical trial, which is, to me, absolutely insane and definitely abuse.
Kellie-Jay.
Yeah, well, look, who are the parents who are going to offer their kids up for this? I mean, it's sort of, there's a bit of me that thinks, are they getting £10 million to prove that there is no such thing as a child with gender incongruence, which I think is such a loose, cowardly term anyway. What does it even mean? Because as far as I'm concerned, you can't measure gender. I don't even believe in gender. I think it's nonsensical. I just don't think it makes sense as a term. But the only parents that will offer their kids up are going to be bad parents. And surely if you're bad parents, you shouldn't be able to enter the trial. And that instantly should just go, oh, we can't do the trial because we can't find a single child that should be subjected to this live experiment.
It is appalling, but it does say a lot about modern society. Again, that's why we had the reference to a pagan ritual, because our moral compass is it's going nuts at the moment, isn't it, Gerry?
Yeah. Well, it always had a capacity to go nuts, and it just depended on the influences. And we, as humans, we're a herd animal. We are individually, we're weak. Like the average chimpanzee could rip the four of us apart in seconds. We are a weak animal, which means that we have to live in large groups, like meerkats are that. Yeah. And because of the nature of us, we need big groups. And to be able to live in social settings, we have to be able to fit in. And that's why we smile. That's why we nod. These are all the sort of non-verbal communication we have. But we have to be able to live. And unfortunately, that has conditioned us into a situation, as I say, we're herd animals, we're sheep. So if you can get the money to buy out a corrupt media, a corrupt government. And unfortunately, that's been the problem in the last 30 years. Massive amounts of money. The Bill Gates could become billionaires. Elon Musk could become a trillionaire. So there's massive amounts of money, unheard of, unimaginable money. And if you can get your hands on that sort of money, and if you get psychopaths, and unfortunately, the people who rise to the top of these organizations are generally psychopathic. If you get psychopaths who, in effect, really see the rest of the herd, the sheep, as being nothing less than sheep, we will follow on, and unfortunately, that is the reality. We are herd animals. We need to live in societies. We can't survive on our own. Any of the monks or the saints who were, lauded for being saints, they were schizophrenics. Take it from me. They went out into the hills and lived, on the hills on their own. They were schizophrenics, just not diagnosed. I hate to say that to the religious people, but that's the reality. We need society. We need big society around us, and to fit in with that, we kind of have to be herds, and that's why the people like us, are probably. I don't know if I'm not liked, but I'm feared.
Well, my family, I have to make mention that I love them dearly, but they don't reciprocate. And probably rightly so. But my wife still talks to me, and I love that. But I'm just thinking though that all what we're saying is very true. I mean, it is going against the grain in many ways, and we've worked out the reasons of why. Because most likely they're stupid. And I don't mean to be rude, but that's probably the bottom line. They'll believe anything. Next, they'll believe that Starmer is a great prime minister.
No, not a hope. That can't happen.
But
I think, look, it's always a trade-off, right? And you have to ask, what are people getting from believing in this thing? Because that's the only reason people are believing anything, because they believe it gives something to them. So we just have to work out what that is. And at the moment, I think it's social credit. And I think some of the young people, they've got no purpose. So they're just trying to find a purpose.
That's right.
And they found this.
That's why I brought the point up about the moral compass. And I mean, if you look what's happening through, just even in London, we have and I just love it. Ricky Gervais had a poster that says "Welcome to London. Don't forget your stab vest." Well, that was taken down, and I've actually I've embraced it. But what Ricky has said is true, and what we are noticing or looking at, and I've said this many times to many people who are still talking to me, that the Western world is disassembling in front of us. Is that because of our moral compass? Do you think that we have little faith? We like the government to look after us. You look after us. Now you should look after yourself. Why are we in this spot? Because we're talking about child abuse that's sanctioned by the government. Why are we in this spot?
I think it's definitely something, to do with. I mean, I'm not a religious person myself, but I think there's a void, isn't there? There's a void of meaning in life at the moment. And as Kelly said about young people, they're doing degrees in gender studies and things that really mean absolutely nothing. So it sucks them into this, and they're very myopic. I think now everything is about themselves. And Gerry, you mentioned the whole L'Oreal because I'm worth it, and I think they genuinely do feel like that these days. They've been conditioned to believe that their mental health is the most important thing in the world. Their well-being is the most important thing in the world, and they've become obsessed with it. And it's the only thing they can focus on is their themselves and their own little tiny world. And I think that's a big problem because, yes, we're herd creatures, and as you said, Gerry, but they're following something, but very in a lonely way. This is all about me. and getting 10,000 likes for coming out as non-binary. It's got to be addictive, right? For somebody who's been, hence to quite unpopular, maybe. It's quite addictive to get that kind of a love and appreciation suddenly, albeit not genuine, but they feel that it is. So yeah, I think it's to do with a void of meaning and purpose in life, really. That they're looking at coming out of uni with huge debt and a job that they're probably not going to be very satisfied with. So yeah, I think there's definitely a problem that needs fixing. I don't think AI is going to help anything, because there are fewer and fewer jobs, meaningful jobs for people to take.
Forget AI. I really liked Jaime from Get Smart. The closest thing. You probably don't know who Jaime is or Get Smart, but should have a look at it. You'll see what I mean. We're going to wrap this up shortly. I just want to know where to from here, Kellie-Jay. Where to from here? Because I've been known to be a little bit pessimistic, and I don't see us changing the narrative at the moment. I don't think we're strong enough as a collective, and I think the propaganda is working well, and I think we are far too distracted, and we don't have that moral compass, because, as they say, ye have little faith. What do you think?
Well, look, I think there's an issue with a God-shaped hole, and I say this as an atheist, although you may have seen I have started to wear a cross, but I think that's just hedging my bets. But I'm a gold star atheist, which means I've never ever had any religion or any belief in God. But I think that was in the comfort of a society in which many people did have faith and a moral compass that was guided by sort of Christian, Judeo-Christian morality. And there's two ways it could go. Well, there's many ways, but I said about 10 years ago that I feel that after chaos, people will look for order, and that order will come, unfortunately, in the form of a very prescriptive religion. And I thought it would be the rise of Islam. I didn't quite realize that we'd have marches on the street that was like a practical recruitment drive for what I could call a death cult, which is Islam. But more people my age, I've noticed, are returning to church, and I think maybe we're understanding that even if you don't believe in God, you need to have some sort of cohesion. And we've moved away from families, communities, and so on, because we move for jobs and we commute everywhere. So I think people are needing to find that community and understanding what we've lost when we have lost some sort of collective faith or belief system. And I think that is fundamentally how we've been so vulnerable to this new nihilistic, self-absorbed. When you're not looking for when you're not striving for something beyond yourself, then you look inward, and then we're all damned.
Gerry?
I'm an optimist. I'm an eternal optimist. I have great faith in mankind, even though I rip into them and I rip them off, and but I have great faith in the fundamental goodness of mankind. I also have faith in the level of intelligence that they eventually get it. And I think, and this is going to be a crazy thing for me to say, because COVID has been my nightmare. The messenger RNA vaccine has been my nightmare. I wake up in sweats thinking about what they're doing to people. But I believe that COVID has awoken people. I believe it has given rise to skepticism in people. People are asking questions because it was such a massive crime. I think COVID was their bridge too far. I believe that was the bridge that they pushed. I believe that they when I say they, I'm talking about there's an elite group, sort of the under government, the under whatever it is. I don't know who they are. People like to throw around Rothschilds, this, that. I don't know. All I'm saying is there is a group with massive amounts of money, and money is in effect the source of all evil, or the misuse of it. And I believe that COVID has woken people up. I believe questions have been asked. I believe COVID, the climate change thing is collapsing. I believe, COVID is collapsing. The whole hoax of COVID is collapsing. I can see the very fact that, you brought me on. You got me up in the morning to actually. I thought I was coming for a fight, and I ended up with two lovely people. God damn it! You know, if you couldn't get somebody who I could rip into, you know, like this has been rather disappointing this last hour.
That's right. Okay, but here is something though, and you are right in what you're saying.
Generally,
But you are right in what you're saying. But I don't think I truly. Sure, people are awake. There are more that are awake, and they're saying, okay, COVID was bad, and this is bad. It doesn't make much difference unless you have a great collective, because government's going to do exactly what they want. And unless we can, as a nation, speaking of the UK here and Australia and New Zealand, as nations, unless you can say we've got the gonads to actually make sure, I don't mean the women, they're going to have not gonads, otherwise it's...
they have.
Okay, but we have to have the guts, don't we, to stand up. And I don't believe, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, Gerry, I don't believe there is enough people, and I don't believe enough people who have seen the light, and I don't believe as a collective, the nation, for example, Ireland, I don't believe it's strong enough to change what is happening and what will happen.
I can't. I can't, intellectually, I can't argue with you, but emotionally, I must. I must believe that we will, as you know, as a people, as a race, as you know, humanity must do the right thing. Otherwise, we're heading into a dystopian world of 1984.
I have to say that since COVID, I've met some amazing people, a whole community of people who I wouldn't have met had I not been involved in standing up and going to protests about COVID. And there is an amazing community. It's probably not big enough yet, but I see it growing, and things like transgenderism, I think, are pulling more people in, because even if some people aren't willing to speak out publicly about it, they still know that it's insane. So I have hope. I have some hope that that amazing community will keep growing. And a lot of people in that community talk about mass non-compliance, so peaceful non-compliance as being the way out of this, not massive revolution at the Houses of Parliament, but mass non-compliance is one really, really powerful tool that we've got. So yeah, I hope that it's a growing community of people that are seeing the insanity of it all and don't want any part of it.
I think the Kellie-Jay mentioned before that even though you're an atheist, and good on you, it's none of my business though. But I think what it does do, it's all of our laws were written from generally, not now, but generally a position of good and to make sure things flow evenly. And when you go into a church, and by the way, if I went into a church, the roof would fall in, or it would. I mean, I'd catch fire.
The omen.
That's right. Well, and that's an omen, isn't it? Not to go into a church. But I'm just thinking, though, what it does do is that you have it's like this collective good, generally. And
and consequences as well. I think that there are consequences, and maybe we've gone a bit off piste when it comes to, are there consequences for things? Well, it depends who you are in this country right now. I was looking at a case yesterday where somebody had got 9 months for putting bacon on a mosque, and they got 9 months in prison for that. And a group of pro-Palestine people had stood around a synagogue, and like real mob aggressive behavior, and they were enabled by police. So it does make a difference in this country right now. I've had the police at my door this is verbatim, for being untoward about paedophiles. I was arrested during lockdown for going and having a women's rights meeting outside. So I was taken into the back of a police van and put in it was for my own safety, right? So we couldn't have a meeting outside, and yet I was then sat in a cell that was full of human human fluids wiped on the walls. So Yeah, it's the consequence. That's what, like, religious schools in this country, in the UK, Catholic schools in particular, have the best outcomes and behaviour standards, and there is a reason for that. And I don't think it's a God reason, but I do think it's a community reason. And so maybe we'll go back to that. Look, we've existed a long time. We're no different than the people that walked this earth like 3,000 years ago. We have the same motivations. We want to be loved. We want to be safe, and we want to be free. And I think particularly in the UK, and I've seen in Ireland, the working classes are beginning to rise and
Yeah.
realizing that this is an all-out war against them. And I
Yeah.
don't think they'll put up with it too much longer. And I hope to
No.
see more unrest on the streets where people say no.
Maybe
Yeah.
we could have the obviously it's a new department, the Bacon Police. I mean,
It's
or could you call them? And I'm not being rude because my dad was a policeman, so I can say what I like. But not the Bacon Police, maybe the Pig Police.
the funny.
And that will lead me to hello, and come and visit us. So I will not say much else because Gerry will tell me off anyway.
No. I was going to point out that thing about bacon. Like, why do Jews and Muslims, have this abhorrence for bacon? And the fun thing is, an awful lot of religion was based on practicality, and the reason was that bacon went off much more, and you're likely
Without
to get food
refrigeration.
poisoning or die from eating bacon. And there was a pure practicality in warm climates that the kind said, yeah, well, bacon goes off, and so this is the crazy thing about it. They kind of say, oh, don't eat hoofed animals or whatever it was, or cloven or whatever it is. This is all, there was a practicality, and a good religion would be one with a practical, reasons for doing things. And within Catholicism and Christianity generally, the vast majority of the rules and regulations, the Ten Commandments, are towards societal trust and societal functioning. So it's good. So a good religion is about good practical reasons for doing things. The fact that refrigeration has come in, and food preservation has come in, means that you can eat pigs. But this is the crazy thing about it. Now, if somebody went out and threw something with a tetanus toxoid or something onto a building, I'd object to it. But the fact that they threw a rasher onto a building, I'd say, well, practically that has no significance other than the thinking of the other side. That's their problem. The problem is with you, not with me.
I think what we're all agreeing on as we wind this up is that the society's gone nuts and the
Pigs.
moral compass is not there, and to be abusing children, it's just and that's what it is, government sanctioned. But look, they had government sanctioned murder and maiming from the COVID, so nothing should surprise us. Where to from now, I don't know, but I've got to thank you all for joining me. It's I would talk more, but we got right over the time. It's Gerry's fault, by the way. Kellie-Jay,
Don't blame me. Oh
No,
yeah, that's what
I
I'm
am.
because
I'm
I'm the male.
you are.
Yeah.
We get away with everything.
Fine.
Kellie-Jay, thank you very much. Dr. Gerry Waters, thank you. And Sarah Newlyn, thank you very much for your time. This is The World Today, and this has been The Protagonist. See you tomorrow. Thank you.